These are live images coming to us from the racecourse. We are on board with Team Brunel out on the water, currently competing in the Volvo Ocean Race on leg 8. Now, we're not going to get a chance to speak to the sailors at the moment. They are right in the thick of racing. However, we will be speaking to the team tomorrow. But for now, we are going to stay with those live images as long as the connection holds out. Joining me in the studio here in Volvo Ocean Race headquarters in Alicante is Conrad Coleman. And thanks to the courtesy of the Cobham Hardware, the Inmarsat network, we are getting to see what life is like on board. So let's take another look and see what we can tell from the racing right at the moment. Well, Conrad, first of all, I mean, Team Brunel, at the moment, they're third on the podium. This is not the same team that we were talking about 2 legs ago that were sort of struggling to find the pace.
Well, third overall on the podium, third on the racecourse right now, and they got there, at least overall, by leapfrogging with an incredible performance in the last leg. Remember, this was the team that got out onto an early lead in the last leg, coming out of Auckland into the Southern Ocean. And really, with all of the experience on board, most notably with Bauer Becking, who's here for his 8th time in a row, it put on an incredible display of seamanship. You know, this was a leg that really rewarded sort of careful dosing between sort of risk and reward. You know, we saw some incredible drone images from the OBR in the previous leg. Jan Ryu, who sent us those drone images of the fro and the triple reef, and they were taking really good care of the crew and of the boat, and it really paid in the last leg, and it allows them to get all the points possible. And
they are going to surely be desperate to try and capitalise on that. We are seeing the crew right now. Carl Langford on the helm, just taking both hands off the wheel momentarily, just to try and get some fluids back inside and wash the sunglasses as well. I mean, this is also a little bit of an insight here, because a lot of the boat feeds that we get off, a lot of the pictures, they look pretty glamorous. But actually, life on board when you're offshore, it's quite monotonous.
It's definitely quite monotonous. And in many ways, that's sort of where the value comes in. The Volvo Ocean Race is the longest sporting event in the world, in any sport, whatever your pick. And so the teams that will naturally rise to the top are the ones that can concentrate for the hardest, that can drill down into the little details, that can keep the boat safe and the crew safe. But no, you're right. It's not glamour. The food isn't spectacular. The view is great, as you can see here, though, from this. So this is from a camera on the mast looking forward. We're still sailing upwind. I just checked the telemetry just before we came on air. It looks like they've got a little bit more winds than usual, so they're up to 17 knots at the moment, sailing here with the J1 at around sort of 18 to 20 knots, 18 to 20 degrees of heel, sorry.
And now, I don't want you to say too much more about the J1, because I'm going to be asking you a little bit more about the sails and the mechanics. And, well, just look at that. That's the shot at the moment from the top. I mean, this is all about going upwind, a bit of a contrast to what we've seen previously in the Volvo Ocean Race. The sails really strapped in, the main strapped on. But right now, condition-wise, it looks pretty good. Powerful sailing.
Yeah, I think that they're in a really good range here for the sails that they have. You can see that the boom is right up on centerline, so perfectly trimmed to try and extract as much power as you possibly can from the sail plan. So just remember, with this canting keel boat, then you'll have the keel canted all the way to weather or towards the top of your image. You've got a dagger board, asymmetrical dagger board, down to leeward, and to try and keep a lot of grip on the water and to keep forcing that boat up to windward. But on the shot that we just had, we also saw all of the sails and all the material stacked up on the very edge of the boat to try and give it as much rigidity as possible. And as you can see here on this shot, there's still plenty of heel. So I'll just have a look at the telemetry while you keep on going there.
Well, as you say, Conrad, this is plenty of heel. This is the difference, really, that we've been seeing. It's all about upwind. The sails fully strapped in, plenty of power. Important to point out as well, the stack as well, in the middle of the boat, well on the windward side, controlling that heel, a big factor.
That's right. I just checked. They're up to 33 degrees, and so that is an increase in wind. So as the gust comes on, clearly the boat heels over.
And hard work for the crew as well, because moving around on a boat that's tipping over like that, that's not too easy.
It's certainly not. At this point, you will wish that your left leg gets shorter and your right leg gets longer to help you keep that equilibrium on board a boat that's going to stay, at least on this wide, on this tack just for a few more hours. But once they finally tack over and start heading north on starboard, well, they're going to have to grow their legs the other way.
Okay, well, look, just to reiterate again, these are live images from Team Brunel, but unfortunately we have not got the chance to speak to Bauer Becking, the skipper, or indeed any of the crew. That will be tomorrow. If you've got any questions for the team about what you're seeing right now from them, or indeed any aspects of the Volvo Ocean Race, put it in the comments below. The best ones we will endeavour to pass on to the crew when we speak to them tomorrow. We're going to stay with them, but for now, let's take a look at how the race is unfolding on the virtual track. Since the start in Irijaí, all the teams have been punching out east. They had an exclusion zone to avoid from a drilling ship. There's been plenty of congestion out on the water. But for the teams at the moment, the racing has remained tight. Sunhunkai Scallywag, characteristically, the only boat confident enough of their convictions to break away. They were first to tack off while the fleet made their way north. But as the field came back together, it's been Dongfeng race team taking the lead. They have had that difficult situation of deciding when to tack. The rest of the field following them, and now they sail back into a bit of a tricky movement. Well, that brings us up to the current time, but let's see if we can have another little bit of a look about what's happening on Team Brunel at the moment. I mean, the conditions that these sailors have been through has been pretty tough. Right now, I mean, Carl Langford, he's not got a waterproof jacket on the helm.
No, that's a good indication that probably a little bit of spray coming up off the bows, getting thrown back. But for the most part, they're staying pretty dry. You know, bare feet, as you can see there. So much warmer temperatures than we saw on the last leg when everybody was looking like the Michelin Man underneath all of their layers. But just like to point out the fact that we've got 4 people on deck at the moment. So we've got overall 9 people on board the boat. So you've got basically 4 people on watch, 4 people off. So you get a bunch of people lined up in the beds underneath them. And then obviously Andrew Cape, who's probably on watch in the nav station, checking out the next maneuver.
Well, what you're seeing right now, upwind, hard, on the breeze, this is what the sailors are really in for. And, you know, Conrad, I want to sort of talk now a little bit about how this leg is different because, you know, you were saying it yesterday, it's a very different image watching these boats go upwind to what we've seen in the previous leg, certainly with the Southern Ocean. And, in fact, you know, out on the racetrack with the sailors out there pushing pretty hard, Daryl Winslang on board Dongfeng race team, he certainly agrees with you on how different this leg is shaping up to be.
The classic upwind slog, probably 6 days. It's a pleasant change, you know, and sort of it reminds you of what we've just endured is pretty special. So no, it's good mood on board.
A good mood on board, happy boat, but in upwind sailing, I mean, that's tough for the navigators.
It's really tough because in the last legs, typically when we've been seeing so much reaching or so much running, then typically, you know, you can have this route, or if you want to say a little bit higher, a little bit slower, a little bit lower, a little bit faster, you can do that. The difference is relatively small. It's only an issue of a couple of degrees. However, now that the fleet is sailing upwind, so normally you, in terms of true wind angle, that's sort of 45 degrees either way, so you're tacking through 90 degrees. These boats, because they're offshore speed machines, and also because they're chopping their way against, you know, the waves and so on, basically to get the best VMG or direction up against the wind, it's worth it to sail a little bit lower, a little bit further away from the wind, and a little bit faster. But what that means is when you tack, you're tacking from 55 degrees true or 50 degrees true on one end to 50 or 55 the other end. So it's more than 90 degrees that you're tacking through, so which means that you need to be really sharp on the moment that you pick it, because it makes such a big difference.
And we have seen, I mean, just in these images coming off from Team Brunel at the moment, I believe that's Peter Burling going shoeless there on the leeward side of the deck. He has been running around. You see the cleats on the sheets, but you don't really put the sheets down and forget about them. Constant little tweaks, but not only in terms of speed, decision-making as well. Take a look at this clip here. David Witt on board Sunhunkai Scallywag weighing up what's to come.
Today's got to be a decision on when you tack and whether you leave them back or continue on. And that'll probably set up the next 3 or 4 days, so probably a big decision on when to tack today.
So every decision about when to tack, very crucial, and David Witt saying that one decision about when to tack could really lead into what you do over the next few days. We know that there's a big crunch point coming up. Talk us through it.
Well, basically, it's all about when you pick your tack to do your definitive, your last tack all the way north. Now, this is a really tricky spot because you've got a shift in the wind, and I'd like to talk you through that a little bit now. If we go into the virtual eye tracker to get an overall perspective again, this is where they are now. And as we zoom out, I'd just like to highlight sort of Rio, so to give you some idea roughly where we're talking about in case you haven't been following closely to date. Now, one thing that I'd like to point out here is the fact that the wind up here to the north is blowing from right to left, and then over on this side, it's blowing north to south. So that means that there is this very intense curvature in the wind. Now, curvature in the wind means opportunity, because the way that you deal with that is that as the wind curves from one side to the other, well, you do the opposite in your track. You can see where the boats are here. They will be essentially heading off like this, little tack, and then as the wind shifts again, as they head north, because the wind here is different from the wind over here, where you tack back, and then finally, as you get headed, you'll fire your way back up the Brazilian coast. Now, I'd just like to draw your attention to this spot here. This is an exclusion zone. It is the Campos oil field. Really tricky place to sail, and that's why the race committee here has blocked it off. But it does mean that once you sort of approach it, you really need to commit to this offshore option here. However, let's have a look at what is coming up for later on in this leg as the boats finally make that call up towards Recife. So you can see on the route, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 tacks coming up. It could be 4, it could be 15. We'll see how committed these sailors are to be looking for those marginal gains. Now, it's talking about those marginal gains, it's all about when you tack. Do you tack early? Do you, as we saw Dongfeng yesterday, they took the lead by tacking in front of the rest of the fleet. So that was great. That could put you up on an early position here. However, close to the coast, it's really tricky because there's lots of cloud activity and it's really unstable wind. However, if you choose to go off further, well, you invest in a more stable option that's going to give well, it's like an investment portfolio. You invest for the long term and it's going to pay back and be more secure, but you risk having somebody else tack inside you.
So a very crucial decision to be making about when you need to go, how it is you're going to attack the next few days. And as David Witt was saying, the decisions that you are making now about where to attack are going to really lock you into that call. And well, if you were joining us earlier, you'll know that we had live images with Team Brunel. They have got themselves back onto the race course. They are pushing away. We are not able to speak to any of the sailors, but we are going to be talking to them tomorrow. So once again, if you see something that you just want to be a little bit inquisitive about or anything to do with the Volvo Ocean Race, put it in the comments below. We're going to pass them on to the sailors when we talk to them. But Conrad, you mentioned clouds. Obviously, we're learning now that the navigators have got an awful lot on with these very crucial decisions that they get locked into. But in terms of the local effects as well, there's some big movement there. Have a look at this video clip here. This is a Dongfeng race team, and it's just important to point out just how much movement there is going on in the clip. Let's have a little look at this clip here from a Dongfeng race team. Now, you'll see the sailors looking around. They are not looking at the other competitors. They are trying to work out what is happening with the breeze, where the clouds are, and how best to avoid those light wind areas and how to get the gains.
I've got a feeling we should tack.
To avoid this, I was thinking exactly the same.
Just wondering if we shouldn't be just prepared to tack here to this cloud.
On prend un gros risque? Non, on y va.
So decisions for 3 days' time, dictating when you tack. The local little clouds dictating when you tack. Conrad, what are they looking for? What are they trying to exploit?
Well, the way that it works with the clouds is that it messes up your overall wind by having these little localized disruptions. So let's have a look at the next clip here. And you can see, well, you need to keep a really, really close eye on them because you need to track the evolution of the cloud. Now, if you can just pause here for a second, what I'd like to draw your attention to is this dark area here. So that's lots of rain that's falling down from that very localized cloud. Now, as the rain falls down, well, as it falls, it grabs air molecules, and so that means that you end up with these really strong downdrafts of air, very localized vertical wind that when it hits the surface of the water, it splays out. You know, much like if you took this cup of water and then sort of poured it out, well, it would splash everywhere. So that can have a really disruptive effect on the wind when it comes into contact with the synoptic wind or the overall wind. It can either augment it, and so that allows a boat to get a nice turbo boost, or it can fight against it, creating sort of really localized lulls. So whether you win or lose, it's all up to how you read the cloud.
So reading the cloud, trying to find yourself on the best side to get the boost of the breeze. Well, have a look at this clip. Sun Hunkai Scallywag getting their positioning just right.
Have they all put their bow up, Parker?
Yep. They're about to get it. They're about to go into a big cloud. I think we're doing the right thing. Yeah. We might not get over all of them, but we'll get at least some.
So small gains out there on the race course for all of the sailors who keep a wide eye on and try and read where those clouds are moving. Big gains for the navigators who really sweat into those decisions that are going to lock them into the racetrack for the next few days. But of course, also, it comes down to speed, trying to find those small gains out in the racetrack. And Pablo Arate on board Mafre here explains beautifully why they count down every little centimetre of movement.
The speed of the boat is key in this kind of legs, no? Because all the boats, we are close to each other, and you want to gain meter by meter to the other boats. No? And if you can gain 1 meter and suddenly you get a small advantage, probably you get the advantage as well to pass the clouds wherever you want, and maybe the boats behind get stuck. No? It can be the other way around, but of course it's always better to have a small advantage and decide where you want to go. So the speed is critical.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the navigation, we've talked a little bit about the local effects. Let's talk about the mechanics of going fast. We're going upwind, so really 3 big sails to choose from to try and drive the boat. Conrad, talk us through them.
Well, first off, we've got the monster here. So the masthead code 0, typically used for really light conditions, purely upwind, like you can see in that shot there. Or indeed more for reaching, the J0. So this again is for purely upwind work in light conditions or reaching in this shot. But then the kicker is the J1. This is the biggest of the dedicated jibs, and as you can see, it requires a lot of work.
Now, the forecast-wise, we know that the wind and the angle to the breeze that the boats are going to be sailing on pretty much puts them somewhere between the J0. Sometimes that's going to be fastest. Sometimes on the J1, they're going to have to be flicking between the two, and that's the worst 2 sails to be changing.
It's really tough. I've been watching the wind go up and down between 13 and 17 knots, and that's right in the tricky zone. And so what that forces the sailors to do is exactly what you can see here in this image, that we're on the J0, the big sail in behind, but they're dropping the J1. Now that is a conventional sail attached to the forestay with hanks. It goes up and down on the forestay. But what's tricky about that one is, as you can see, it requires just so many people to get involved in the job of putting the sail up and down. Maybe you need to drag it up onto the foredeck, connect it in place as the boat's hammering along over the waves, through the waves in some cases. And then that, as you saw in those images, it took 4, sometimes 5 sailors up on the foredeck. Remember, a boat like Mafre is only sailing with 8 people on board at the moment. So if you put half of them up on the foredeck, you add 1 person driving, 1 person in the pit controlling the halyard with the drop, then that takes up the entire crew. It's a huge, huge job.
So the navigators are nervous. The sailors are very paranoid about where the next cloud is going to strike. And combined with that, they're not getting enough rest because they've got to be there on deck, pushing themselves through these sail changes. Well, just before we came on air, we got a chance to talk to Dee Caffari, skipper of Turn the Tide on Plastic, performing well in this leg, but I spoke to Dee about the challenges coming up and what it was going to take because, I mean, for Dee Caffari here, she's just had a very strong Southern Ocean leg, so the big question was, how are they faring up in this one and how well was this leg shaping up?
Well, it's interesting because that corner not only has a change in weather, lots of hazards inshore and potentially light winds inshore, but also a very large exclusion zone. And if you end up inside that exclusion zone, it doesn't give you a lot of options. So rather than be trapped in potential light winds inside, I think we're going the outside option. But it all depends on how the next shift plays out, really. We've been slowly tacking our way out, more east than north, unfortunately, for our mileage not going down. But we're getting there slowly, and that big protrusion out of Brazil sticking out to the east is a big kind of landmark of us trying to all get around that. So we're very aware of that's quite a key mark in this leg.
For those of us watching the race on shore, the conditions couldn't be more different from what we saw in the Southern Ocean leg. But paint a picture for us. What are the challenges like on this upwind slog?
Well, it's just as tricky. Sometimes when there's more action going on in the last leg, it's almost easier. But I think the wind is just on that transition. It's just halfway between should we be on a masthead, should we be on a J1 going upwind. We're all within sight of each other, and every now and again somebody tries something different. We're all just trying to get that balance between full upwind and going fast. Sometimes the sea state's just a little bit bouncy, and as soon as you get any chop, it slows the boat down. So it really is about having weight in the right place, reacting to the changes in pressure and the little shift changes we get. Also, it's pretty busy out here. There's a fleet of 7 of us moving, but there's also a lot of ships out here searching and doing research in the area for oil. So it's been a pretty busy night, and it looks like it's continuing on today as well.
So potentially what looked to be quite a simple leg is going to be anything but. It's going to come down to those tiny meters you gain along the way. Literally, I mean, we're all sailing within meters of each other now, and I think this is going to continue along the way. We've got a southerly going current every time we come inshore, so that's not helping. We've got these subtle variations in pressure, and we've got exclusion zones and oil rigs and fishing boats and the alike up this coastline. So this first bit's quite hard work. Once we get clear and we're in the trades, then the next thing is the doldrums. So every time you think you've got over one hurdle, there's another one waiting for us. So it is a leg that rewards patience, and it's still a long way to go, as we know. Plenty of challenges for all the sailors, but have a little look at this. After we spoke to Dee Caffari, I had a check on the Twitters coming from the boat. Henry Bombi, crew member, tweeted this earlier on today. Imagine going out to sea and forgetting your toothbrush on the shore, and you're going to be out there for 10, 15, maybe 20 days, and all the time you are going to have to be dealing with, I don't know how on earth he's going to manage to keep his teeth clean. We'll cross our fingers that his breath isn't too bad for the rest of the boat. Now then, let's take a look at another sailor out there. Charles Caudrelier, the French skipper of the Chinese team Dongfeng race team. He is back now for the second edition as skipper. He's desperate to win the race while he holds onto the skipper position on board. And when we were in Itajaí, we got the chance to catch up with him and take another look at why this person commands such respect from his competitors. Dongfeng race team are back for a second time after finishing third in the last edition. Skipper Charles Caudrelier has set his sights on nothing less than victory. Since the start of the race 7 months ago, they've consistently featured at the top of the pack, setting a blistering pace, although they failed to maintain the lead all the way to the finish, and a leg win still eludes them.
Yes, it's amazing that we never win a leg since the start. We have many opportunities and we fail. And of course, winning a leg is the best thing. It's give you a big boost, and we really want it. But actually, as I say, the most important is to have a steady result. If you're always on the podium at the end of the Volvo Ocean race, we can win even without winning a leg. I think if we continue like that, I'm happy. The goal is to get the first in the overall, so winning a leg.
Out of 6 scoring legs, they've only been off the podium once. And after finishing second on the double points leg into Brazil, Dongfeng race team now top the overall rankings. A confidence boost just at the right time.
We are the new leader of the ocean race. Of course, yes, it's very positive for us. It's fantastic. We need it because, of course, our energy was going down because we were always, many times ahead of them, many times close to win a leg and or not in a very good position and do a mistake and lost so much.
Yeah. Completely.
At the end, it's a lot of frustration and it's difficult to keep the team together when you have a difficult moment like that and you are exhausted. So we are back on the lead and it's going to boost the team. But the pressure now is, as I said, the pressure was on Mark's shoulder. Now the pressure is back on ours. And we have only, today we are only 1 point away. It's nothing.
A team built on a mix of Chinese rising stars and multinational offshore legends, Dongfeng race team spent the build-up to the race on the water, learning together, something that gave them a strong start Now the experience of the fleet has leveled. And with only one hand on the trophy, Charles Cordrelier knows there's still a huge battle ahead.
We are in very good position to finish first or second, but as you say, the fleet is improving and we can maybe be on the podium. It's so quick. It's not like they start 2 times, it's finished. You can be mistaken, but something it's finished. So the pressure is going. And that's the pressure that we have to deal with. That makes the difference between a winner and a loser.
Well, there you go. Charles Cordrelier, skipper of your new race leaders, but only by one single slender point. And he was reflecting on the pressure that was going to be waiting for him with all the competitors bearing down on him on the racetrack. But now things are going quite well. He's out in the lead. He is there pushing ahead. And moments ago, I got a chance to call him live from the water and speak to him about how the race is unfolding and what it was like dealing with that pressure.
It's more clear what we have to do, but to be honest, the last 24 hours, I was a bit stressed by the weather forecast, which was quite complicated, and it's a big trap. I mean, I think this leg, what is really difficult is to exit of Brazil, and if you miss it after, maybe you have no opportunity to come back. So. But the fleet stay together, and when we tag, they follow us, so it's quite good. We don't really like this when it's a bit too complicated like that. We prefer when it's more about speed. But anyway, for the moment we are in a good position, and the pressure has dropped a bit since the start.
Can you give us an insight as to what you're thinking?
There is a big risk of light spot, so it will be a balance between pushing too much east and pushing more east, and increase the distance. So that's going to be a key point. But fleet is together, so I think it's the same question for everybody, and I don't think anybody will take the risk to go too close to the shore. Can you just give us a description about what it is you're doing now? What is it you're looking out for? We're looking at to be 0.1 knot faster than the other one if we can. We have to avoid also a few fuel stations ahead of us, and I hope that we will not have to bear away or change our course too much for one of the stations I can see ahead of me. We already lost a few meters yesterday. A cargo ship who was completely lost in the middle of the fleet and comes to crash us, so we had to avoid him. But yeah, no, we are just focused on the speed, and be a tiny faster than the other one is good. Brunel is quite fast. He did a mistake yesterday, but he's really fast in the start. He's a good boat upwind. He's always good upwind, and he's really fast. So we are trying to match his speed, and if possible, just 0.1 faster. We're happy. You're leading the leg, you're leading the overall, and I can see you've got a good crew around you. Stu Bannatyne on the wheel. What's it like having him back on board? He's a fantastic driver, and he has good advice, and he's fresh. I mean, he has been working a lot since he left us, but he was sailing in the Caribbean for 3 hours per day, so I think he's less exhausted than us, especially now that I really feel tired from the entire race, and it's more and more difficult to start a leg, and I know this is going to be more and more difficult at each start, but this one is quite tough for me, and I was sick last week and I didn't have a good rest, so I'm trying to rest on the boat now, but it's not easy to rest on the Volvo Ocean Race. Charles Cordrelier, skipper of Dongfeng race team, talking about just how long this race is and just how much energy it draws from your body. Tomorrow, we're going to be speaking to Team Brunel. If you missed the top of the show, you can rewind it. We were live with them as they were competing on the water in this leg 8. If you've got questions, put them in the comments below about the race, about the team, about what's going on board, or in fact, anything. Any question that you might have, the best ones, we will start pushing forward towards the team, and we'll bring you the answers to those
tomorrow. Also in the morning, we're going to have our quick fix, and then at 1300 UTC, we've got another daily show, another in-depth look about what's paying, who's winning, who's losing, and what's to come. We'll see you then.